Welcome to Assault, Learn and Play Part 6.2, Chapter 9, Movement Actions Part 2. So in this part we want to talk about special terrain types, and the first special terrain types are hills. And hills are areas with terrain with higher elevation, and units require of course additional movement allowance to enter a hill hex. And how a hill looks like I will show in the tabletop simulator. This is the map tile S6B, and this map tile covers a hillside with elevation level of 1 and with elevation level of 2. So you see the mark on the map. There, this is helpful for you as a player to identify which level has what terrain. And to differentiate between the different levels, we have designed the map tiles with different colors and different lights. So for example, we have here level 0, so these hexes are still level 0. And of course the adjacent map tile is all level 0 here. There is no hillside on the map. So then you see of course a different, you see here slopes from the hill sides, and this is an identification, oh, that elevation level of terrain is higher than 0. And there you have the 1 as a help. A figure should help to identify. So you see now the slope and the terrain is covered. Here is elevation 1. And this hillside has of course parts with elevation 2, and you see the help figure 2 here, and you see a gray area which marks, for example, this elevation 2 hill side and this elevation 2 hill side. So we have elevation 2 here, elevation 1 is the most part of the map, and we have smaller parts with elevation 0. And you see, if you combine your map tiles, you see of course a difference. So this is to identify which kind of elevation you have. Therefore we have of course this help figures to see, okay, this is still 1 or 2. Also special, but will be covered later, are these little white marks here. These are marks for steep slope. So if you cross such a mark, you are moving throughout a steep slope. Okay. How does this look like from the rules perspective? So if you have your terrain chart on your hand, you see here on the lower part, you see hill at level 2, 1, and you see slopes marked below. And you see on the movement costs section that there is a +1, a +2 for artillery, +2 for wheeled, +2 for tracked. And you see asterisk 2, 3. So you can read that this movement up, so level is always +1 if you move up an elevation from 0 to 1, 1 to 0, that you have to add these movement points to your movement. For infantry it's easy, it's +1 for each level elevation climbed to enter the hex. And for artillery it's +2. It's +2 for each level, and of course you have to know artillery cannot climb 2 elevation levels, so from 0 to 2 is not possible. Same +2 for wheeled and tracked, but they are able to climb up 2 elevation levels. That's the terrain chart for hillsides. And now for the rules to play. So if I make an example, like the infantry example, I will do it in the tabletop simulator. So my infantry unit wants to move up from 0 to elevation 1 in the brush hex. First thing is I have to check what kind of movement I do need. If I go to the terrain chart, I have infantry moving up the hill, +1, okay, +1, and move into the brush hex again, a 1, so I need 2 points movement allowance to go on the hill and inside the brush hex. This would be a normal action. So if we do another example for movement up the hill, this infantry is now on level 0 and wants to climb up to this level 1 heavy forest. So I have to take the terrain chart, and I have +1 because I want to go up the hill and +2 for the heavy forest. So this movement allowance which is needed, costs, are at 3. My infantry unit has only a movement allowance of 2. So we have again 3 necessary, 3 needed. I have only 2 on the unit card, so this is a harsh terrain, and then I have to make a delayed action up that hill. Now let us go to the buildings. So buildings in the game are either single story elevation level 1 building or multi-story elevation 2 buildings. And we have 3 types of buildings in the game. We have single story buildings, multi-story, and large buildings. And it is important to differentiate between the building itself with its elevation level, which has an impact on the line of sight during figuring out the line of sight, and a difference between units occupying hexes with buildings. So if you take a single story building is considered, so units which are in a single story building are considered to be in the same elevation level as the terrain hex the building occupies. So for example, a unit occupying a single story building on an elevation level 1 hill, it's rated as being at elevation 1. So it's a plain building, so it's only a single story. There's not much, there's no elevation difference between the terrain in which the building stands, in comparison to the multi-story or large buildings. So large buildings and multi-story buildings have more than one story, of course, and only infantry type units can occupy this kind of buildings, can go inside the buildings and use the buildings for cover and so on. And they are then able to add +1 elevation level if you check on which elevation this infantry unit is. To keep it easy, we left out to separate a unit's elevation with some kind of marker of I'm in the first story, or in the second, or in the floor. We left this out to keep it easy. We say if an infantry unit is in a building, in a multi-story or large building, it is always 1 level up to the terrain hex in which the building is. Artillery and vehicle units are always considered to be at the same elevation as the terrain hex the building is in. For example, an infantry unit occupying a multi-story large building on an elevation level 1 hill is ready to be on +1 on elevation level 2 when you are attempt to trace a loss. However, multi-story and large building are rated as 2 additional elevation levels when determining if they hinder line of sight. So you have to differentiate between checking line of sight and checking where is my target, or from where I'm fire, from which elevation level a unit from my side is firing to an enemy. So I would explain this inside the tabletop simulator to get this clear. On this map tile, it's S1P, we have of course level 0 landscape and terrain. We have level 1 hillsides, left and right, and you see 2 red roofed buildings. And if you go take a look to the terrain chart, I will grab it here. You see the multi-story and single-story buildings. So you have on this map, you have a single-story building like the brown roof, and you have multi-story buildings. And you see single-story buildings have on the far right the elevation raw. You have here a 1 and the asterisk with 2. So there's the note when determining if they hinder LOS, you have to count 1 elevation. Units occupying this hex are considered to be elevation level 0. Because it's a single story building, it has no more stories than the ground floor. And then you have the red roofed multi-story buildings. There you have an elevation of 2 when determining if they hinder line of sight. Infantry units occupying the hex are considered to be on elevation level 1. Artillery and vehicle units on elevation 0. And important, no indirect firing from this hex is possible. Okay. And then you would have a large building. A larger building covers 2 or more hexes of a terrain. So every building which is bigger than 1, you see it here, or here 3 hexes, this building is of course a large building. And this of course a large building. So this is also a multi-story like the church. It's also a large building with elevation level 2. And then you see when determining if they hinder line of sight, infantry is considered to be on elevation level 1. Okay, what does this mean now? If we take now a rifle unit and put it on the elevation 1 hill, and we have an enemy unit which is on elevation level 0 inside this single story building, then we have of course a direct line of sight between them. If I am inside of this single multi-story building, this unit is now on elevation level 1 because of the building and +1 because of the hill. So this is on elevation level 2, and this is important for later on line of sight, which I cover in a separate part, in a separate video. This is important to know how the terrain works, because if I'm higher with my elevation, I can look over lower elevations. So if I'm on elevation level 2, I can look overall level 1 hindrance or obstacles. So this is important, but will be covered later in the line of sight topic. But just to know how buildings are working. This unit is in a elevation 1 building for line of sight, but the unit itself is considered to be an elevation 0 because it's on a ground floor building on a single story building. So we have to differentiate again between line of sight impact of a building and where is a unit located, on which elevation level is it, and that's quite easy. Single story adds nothing to the elevation, and multi-story and large building adds +1 for infantry units as an elevation. So let us go further to roads and trails. So some hexes include main roads, narrow roads and covered trails. They are clearly marked on the map parts. and I want to show some examples. So on this map tile you clearly see there is a main road, and you can compare it with the terrain chart. So this is a main road with, of course, the main road aspects, and then you have narrow roads which are thinner and not so built with stone, so it's a really narrow road, and the narrow road has different things to take into account. And then we have, of course, covered trails. These are covered trails which brings in some rules for moving with infantry units. So below you see the covered trails, and the covered trails can be used by infantry and not by artillery vehicles to get the more covered movement up. Then you have again main road, and you have here an urban map tile. You have a main road crossing here, and you have narrow roads inside building hexes or urban alleys. So, or narrow roads flanked by buildings or urban alleys, and they have same rules as narrow roads, but some specialities we will go into with this part. Again, we have here then covered trails, so you have small covered trails which lets infantry move quicker through such hexes with some more cover. So let us start with some important rules. A unit that enters through a hex site following a road or trail can use their movement point cost instead of the terrain in the hex. A unit that enters a hex through a hex site that does not follow a road or trail must pay the full terrain costs of that hex. So, for example, where's my tank? Here's my tank. So, we've learned to check the movements. So, the Panzerschreiber has 3 points movement lines, and he wants to follow the main road. Where we go? He wants to follow the main road. Then he can do by a normal action with 3 points, 1, 2, 3. And main road costs, here you can read, for tracked vehicles 1 point, no movement cost for changing direction. So on the main road he is allowed to change freely his direction. So this was one rule. And a unit enters a hex through a hex site that does not follow the road or trail must pay the full terrain cost. We have an example here in the book. So here's a covered trail, and you see here this unit right lower side is following a trail through the heavy forest. So it pays only 1 point for entering the heavy forest because of using the trail. This upper left unit crosses a heavy forest, but not using the trail direction, has to pay 2 movement points crossing that, going into that heavy forest, and 1 more to go out again to the rocky area. So this is in principle important to know. So if you have this area and you have now this situation, so this unit is allowed to use 1 point to enter here because using the covered trail, and a 2nd point to go down to this heavy forest, and in comparison this unit wants to has to cross here inside with 2 because it is the heavy forest which is counting, and it can use a fast action to go 1 further here. So you see, you can save movement allowance if you're using trails for your infantry units. Then, if stationary infantry artillery are attacked by direct fire while they are in a hex with a road, they always receive the defense bonus of terrain in the hex they are in. So this is also important. If we have, for example, an urban alley here, and the infantry starts moving 1 to here, and it ends its movement, then it is considered that the soldiers are using the best cover if they are ending their movement, and the best cover would be, of course, the single story building here in that hex. If they get fired on, they get the bonus of the infantry for single story, which are 2 yellow and 1 blue die. Okay. If this is now a tank using the urban alley to drive through the city here, and it ends its movement here in this same hex, it's not a vehicle, it's not an infantry and not an artillery unit, it's a vehicle unit, and it got shot, it gets no bonus from the single story, which is a blue. It gets, in this case, the bonus of the urban alley, which is nothing. So that is the difference to urban alleys and other roads and trails by using. But it's for stationary, not under the move. It's for stationary. And you see it in the next rule: if stationary vehicles are attacked by direct fire while they are in a hex with a road, they only receive the terrain bonus of the hex if the line of sight is traced through its terrain. If the line of sight follows the road in the hex, it does not go through the terrain in the hex, the vehicle does not receive any defense bonus. It is reckoned as being on the road. We have an example here below. The Panzer 3J is firing along the alley and hit the German directly, so the German gets no defense because of the light forest, because it's firing along the road. And the other example here is firing through, not along the road, but through the trees, so it is counted for as a hindered line of sight, and so the German gets, of course, a defense bonus of the light forest. So we have then a specialty for roads. We have here a main road, and if this Panzer 3J is firing to the M10, then the line of sight follows the main road, and so the light forest inside the main road has no impact on the line of sight. Therefore the Wolverine does not get any modifications for defense. Instead of, when this Panzer 3J is firing on the M10, then the line of sight is traced not alongside the main road, but through the light forest along the road. Then the M10 gets, of course, some kind of modifications to his defense dice for some advantage. So a difference to that is, of course, if this would have been infantry. So infantry units, we have learned, if they are stationary, so they have not moved or finished movement, so not during a move action, but after a move action, and of course not activated, they are stationary. Also guns. Then infantry and artillery is using, of course, the best cover of the terrain hex. In this case it is the light forest. light forest gives a yellow and a green, and you see a main road gives a blue. So in that case, nothing as a difference is, even this unit has a following road line of sight. The infantry is considered to be anywhere but not on the road, so they are taking cover inside the forest. That is the difference to the example with firing on vehicles, because vehicles are point targets and are not able to hide themselves so much. They will use a road and not drive into the forest to hide. Okay, if units are attacked by direct fire while they are moving in a hex with the road, they only receive the terrain bonus of the hex if the loss is traced through the terrain. If the loss follows the road in the hex and does not go through the terrain in the hex, the unit only receives any defense they would get from being on the road. That is what I have explained. If the player with the infantry rifles starts his action, says I want to activate these rifles, and then starts to move with 1. The opposite player can of course activate this non-activated unit to say I make a reaction fire, but can also wait till the next step, second movement allowance from the infantry inside this hex. And reaction fire means I react on a still moving unit, and so I can say, oh, I want to react on your movement inside to this hex, therefore I'm firing on a still moving unit. So this is what the rule says, and therefore this infantry is to be considered to just being on the road before ending the movement in the light forest. So they get no defense bonus from the light forest but from the main road. So units are still moving are considered to be still on the road if they are following the road. Yeah, that's important to know. Same for vehicles, of course, same for artillery. So if you are under a move action and a player reacts on your moving into a new hex, then you are considered to be moving and following this road. That is important difference. If a unit is stationary because it was not activated before, or it has finished his action and the player has done other things, the opponent player, then it's considered to be stationary. And therefore artillery infantry is using the best terrain bonus, in this case the light forest. So just talk about the tree alleys. So I have shown examples now on the tree alleys, and tree alleys are always defined as main roads in combination with light forests. Then we have talked about urban alleys. Urban alleys are narrow roads in combination with building hex. So urban alleys have the specialities, just keep in mind. For vehicles, they may only move forward and backward along the path of the alley. They are not allowed to change facing because of the narrow urban alley. So turning maneuvers are not possible. So if we go back to the urban alley here, and I want to follow the narrow path, I have to go here, I have to go here, and I'm not allowed to turn backwards here. I'm surely allowed to turn my tank to follow the path, but I'm not allowed to make a 180 turn back. I have to make a reverse shift movement to go backwards. So I can move forwards, and from that point I have to follow the narrow path, and from there I can follow here and here and go out to the main road. If I want to go back, here it's an urban alley, I'm not allowed to turn, I have to make a reverse move, which is possible, and I have to again make a reverse move, and from here of course I have the possibility to turn, to go here, or to turn and go here. So this is important for movement for urban alleys with vehicles. So if you have a second vehicle or artillery unit cannot move through the same terrain a friendly unit is occupying. This is an exception to the stacking limit rule, which says you can move through friendly units. In that case, in an urban alley, you are not allowed to move over a friendly unit which is occupying this urban alley. If possible, we have to break through other terrain. So if we have a second tank here, this one is occupying now this urban alley. Then this unit comes with 1. It wants to follow. This is not allowed. So it has to go probably through the building, but this can end in vehicle damage. So you have to check then. Yeah. And there, because you are not allowed to move through this same hex, this is not allowed. So you have to go around here and probably inside this building, but this will probably really cause problems to your tank vehicle damage if you're trying to get through this. Okay, and then we have talked about cover trails. Cover trails can occur in different types of terrain, and a hex which contains cover trails gives special advantages. An infantry unit following a cover trail is more difficult for enemy to detect. When firing on this unit's attacking blade adds always +1 to the spotting roll. So this is also mentioned in the terrain chart, and just keep it in mind. So this is one part for special terrain. The next part will cover fortifications and obstacles.